When whole world is in quarantine, we clearly see how important they are. Our infants with them have better chances to survive. They prevent diseases and protect our lives and lives of our families. Using them, we eliminated or take control on some of the worst illnesses in history. In the honor of Edward Jenner, we call them vaccines. Vaccines. In the service of preserving lives, for centuries. Vaccines and vaccination. A vaccine is a biological preparation that provides active acquired immunity to a particular infectious disease. A vaccine typically contains an agent that resembles a disease-causing microorganism and is often made from weakened or killed forms of the microbe, its toxins, or one of its surface proteins. The agent stimulates the body's immune system to recognize the agent as a threat, destroy it, and to further recognize and destroy any of the microorganisms associated with that agent that it may encounter in the future. Vaccines can be prophylactic, to prevent or ameliorate the effects of a future infection by a natural or wild pathogen, or therapeutic, to fight a disease that has already occurred, such as cancer. Vaccination is the most effective method of preventing infectious diseases. Widespread immunity due to vaccination is largely responsible for the worldwide eradication of smallpox and the restriction of diseases such as polio, measles, and tetanus from much of the world. The effectiveness of vaccination has been widely studied and verified. For example, vaccines that have proven effective include the influenza vaccine, the HPV vaccine, and the chickenpox vaccine. The World Health Organization reports that licensed vaccines are currently available for 25 different preventable infections. Early vaccines. Several accounts from the 1500s describe smallpox inoculation, as practiced in China and India. Glynn and Glynn, in The Life and Death of Smallpox, note that in the late 1600s Emperor Kangxi, who had survived smallpox as a child, had his children inoculated. That method involved grinding up smallpox scabs and blowing the matter into nostril. Inoculation may also have been practiced by scratching matter from a smallpox sore into the skin. It is difficult to pinpoint when the practice began, as some sources claim dates as early as 200 BCE. If the Chinese were first out of the gate in attempting to develop a vaccine against smallpox, it is 18th-century British physician Edward Jenner, who is credited with developing the first safe and reliable version. In a celebrated experiment in 1796, though it would hardly pass ethical muster today, Jenner harvested bits of a cowpox pustule from a milkmaid named Sarah Nelms and scratched it into the arm of an 8-year-old boy named James Phipps, on May 14, 1796. After, he attempted to infect Phipps with human smallpox, but the boy simply shook off the virus. By 1801, an estimated 100,000 people had been vaccinated using the same method. But Jenner's approach had its limits. Not every human disease has an animal analog that can confer immunity without causing the disease itself. And some animal diseases that do jump to humans can be deadly to both species. The trick then became to work with the viruses and bacteria that do cause human disease, but to disarm them somehow, to strip them of their power to sicken while still teaching the immune system to recognize and neutralize them, in the event of an actual later infection. Scientists realized that there was not just a single way to achieve that goal. There were two. They could kill the virus or bacterium while keeping its physical remains intact, effectively teaching the body to recognize a mannequin of the pathogen, and mount an immune response if it ever saw a live one. In the alternative, they could attenuate or weaken, but not kill the bug, rendering it harmless but similarly teaching the immune system what to look for and kill the next time. Louis Pasteur and modern vaccines. In the 19th century, scientists began to manipulate pathogens with the aim of reducing their virulence, thereby producing safer and more effective vaccines. This process is particularly associated with French biologist Louis Pasteur, who produced the first laboratory-produced vaccine in 1879, for chicken cholera. Although the vaccine was rather ineffective, it heralded a new age of disease control. Jean-Joseph Henri Toussaint produced an anthrax vaccine in 1880, an invention for which Pasteur later claimed credit. In 1885, Pasteur saved a 9-year-old boy's life after he was bitten by a rabid dog, by injecting him with a weakened form of the rabies virus each day for 13 days. The boy never developed rabies and the treatment was heralded a success. Pasteur coined his therapy a rabies vaccine, expanding the meaning of vaccine beyond its origin. The global influence of Louis Pasteur led to the expansion of the term vaccine to include a long list of treatments containing live weakened or killed viruses, typically given in the form of an injection, to produce immunity against an infectious disease. Scientific advances in the first half of the 20th century led to an explosion of vaccines that protected against whooping cough, diphtheria, tetanus, influenza and mumps. Vaccines against polio, measles, rubella and other viruses were added to the list over the decades that followed, and worldwide vaccination rates shot up dramatically thanks to successful global health campaigns. The world was announced smallpox-free in 1980, but there was still a long way to go with other infectious diseases. By the late 1990s, the progress of international immunization programs was stalling. Nearly 30 million children in developing countries were not fully immunized against deadly diseases, and many others weren't immunized at all. The problem was that new vaccines were becoming available but developing countries simply could not afford them. What is a big shame of our civilization? Anti-vaccination movements. Opposition to vaccination has existed as long as vaccination itself. Indeed, the pre-vaccination practice of variolation came under criticism as well. The Anti-Vaccination League, in the UK, was created shortly after the passage of the Vaccination Act of 1853. Another group, the Anti-Compulsory Vaccination League, was founded after the passage of the Vaccination Act of 1867, which raised the age requirements for getting the smallpox vaccine from 3 months to 14 years old. There were anti-vaccination leagues in the United States too. Anti-vaccine groups in the 19th century typically said that vaccines would make you sick, warned about poisonous chemicals in vaccines, said that Jenner's smallpox vaccine didn't work etc. In 1973, John Wilson and M. Kuhlenkampf reported on 50 children seen over 11 years at the Hospital for Sick Children in London. He reported on a clustering of neurological complications in the first 24 hours of the kids getting their DPT shot, even though his team didn't actually see the children for months or years later. In 1974, they reported the findings of 36 of these children in the Archives of Diseases in Childhood. Media coverage of this small study led to fear of vaccines and lower immunization rates. The consequences were not unexpected. In addition to a large outbreak in England, with at least 100,000 cases and 36 deaths, there were pertussis outbreaks and deaths in Japan, Sweden, and Wales after this study. Some experts think that the actual number of childhood deaths was closer to 600. There are several more anti-vaccination cases in late 20th century. Things didn't really get moving in the modern anti-vaccine movement until the 1998 press conference for Andrew Wakefield's study, when he said that "That is my feeling, that the risk of this particular syndrome developing is related to the combined vaccine, the MMR, rather than the single vaccines." The anti-vaccine groups in the 21st century aren't that much different from their 19th century counterparts and they still have same arguments. One thing that may be different now, is that more people have grasped onto the natural as the new medicine movement. Big natural remedy websites, that also push everything from organic food to medical conspiracy theories, also provide a lot of fodder for anti-vaccine folks. Many others push fear about chemicals, so it isn't surprising that it would be easy to scare parents about vaccines. It is important to keep in mind, that the anti-vaccine movement has become a big business. From selling vitamins, supplements, e-books, e-courses, and holistic treatments to pushing for new laws ensuring that kids can stay intentionally unvaccinated and unprotected, they are the very vocal minority. Of course, that doesn't make them right. Vaccines, autism, and other misconceptions. The idea of a link between vaccines and autism has been extensively investigated and conclusively shown to be false. The scientific consensus is that there is no relationship, causal or otherwise, between vaccines and incidence of autism, and vaccine ingredients do not cause autism. Nevertheless, the anti-vaccination movement continues to promote myths, conspiracy theories, and misinformation linking the two. A developing tactic appears to be the promotion of irrelevant research, as an active aggregation of several questionable, or peripherally related, research studies, in an attempt to justify the science underlying a questionable claim. Some of other misconceptions about vaccines are, that a child's immune system can be overloaded if the child receives multiple vaccines at once, more vaccinated than unvaccinated people get sick, Hygiene and better nutrition are responsible for the reduction in disease rates, not vaccination. Natural immunity is better than vaccine-acquired immunity. All these misconceptions have persisted for decades because of a poor understanding of how vaccination works, and they are not based on science facts and relevant researches. Why vaccinate? Vaccination's immediate benefit is individual immunity. It provides long-term, sometimes lifelong protection against a disease. The vaccines recommended in the early childhood immunization schedule protect children from measles, chickenpox, pneumococcal disease, and other illnesses. As children grow older, additional vaccines protect them from diseases that affect adolescents and adults, as well as for diseases they may encounter during travel to other regions. The secondary benefit of vaccination, however, is herd immunity, also known as community immunity. Herd immunity refers to the protection offered to everyone in a community by high vaccination rates. With enough people immunized against a given disease, it's difficult for the disease to gain a foothold in the community. This offers some protection to those who are unable to receive vaccinations, including newborns and individuals with chronic illnesses, by reducing the likelihood of an outbreak that could expose them to the disease. It also protects vaccinated individuals who may not have been fully immunized against a disease, because no vaccine is 100% effective. Vaccination does more than just protect an individual, it protects entire communities. Sufficient vaccination levels can provide protection against disease for members of the community who would otherwise be left vulnerable.